Hi guys, good morning or good afternoon. Bon appetit. Alright, so I hope you guys are ready for today. Today is going to be a presentation which is very close to my heart, I have to say, and the reason it's close to my heart because I've seen this single subject change people's lives drastically. Now this is a little bit different subject than the ones before. This is not an easy one. This is really tough to change, but the payoff is huge, and it's in my opinion, it's not an optional change. It is something that every single one of us in our modern world, modern culture, we need to sort of be aware of, and that's why I picked the subject for today, and it is sugar. Okay, so yeah, I know everyone knows about sugar. Everyone knows, you know, that there's something about it that is really not so good, but in my experience, people really don't understand what sugar does to you. And I think it is superbly important when it comes to these big subjects that people understand it on many different levels, not just, you know, that it's bad for me, so I shouldn't eat it. That doesn't make a change in people's lifestyles. People, you need much more of a motivation and understanding to really make the change that needs to take place. So because of that, I tried to put together this presentation so it works on a few different levels. And I hope I will be able to succeed with it and get some sort of message out there which makes you rethink sugar and how sugar fits into your life. Okay, and what sugar really is, what the heck I'm talking about. Because sugar has many different forms, and that's what the subject is today. So, you need to understand about the history of sugar, I think. Okay, whenever I try to help people to make changes, I try to get every single anchor in them that's possible. So, if you understand the history of sugar, it might also help you to sort of rethink your relationship with sugar. So sugar was domesticated about 10,000 years ago in New Guinea, and they used it in the sugar cane sort of form, and they were chewing on it. Okay, and it was something very important for the natives over there. They used it for all their religious procedures. They used it for ailments. So it was something very important to them. They couldn't have a lot of it, because if you ever try to chew on sugar cane, it's really difficult. You know, you can't get much out of it. It's very sweet, but you know, it's very fibrous. So now, about 1000 BC, it got to India, okay, or to Asia. About 500 BC, it was available in a powdered form in India. 600 AD, it got to Persia, and when the Arab armies took over this region, they basically took the technology and sugar with themselves, and wherever these armies went, they took the technology and they spread it all around that part of the world, you know. So Arabs also made sugar production, they refined the sugar production. Now, making sugar is a very brutal, difficult work. It's really nothing that's easy whatsoever, all right? And so only the lowest class people were working on sugar production because it was such a brutal, difficult job. So prisoners, slaves, these are the folks who were working on these sugar cane fields. So the first time Europeans got the chance to taste sugar, it was when the British and the French crusaders were fighting in the East, the Holy Wars, and they came back to Europe and they were telling all the stories about this sweet thing called sugar. And of course it was very expensive, very rare. It was actually considered a spice. It wasn't a staple item because it was so rare. Only nobility was able to have it. So of course what happened, everyone slowly realized, all the nobility, that this is something really good, I want to have more. So they looked for places where they can grow more of this sugarcane. Now Europe, most of areas in Europe are not good for, you know, raising sugarcane. So Europe started to search everywhere, tried to find fields. Part of this big search was Columbus on the second trip of his. He actually took sugarcane, and successfully he was able to go to the Caribbean and he started to create sugar plantations. Now, this was very successful. They cleared, because sugar plantations need a lot of area, so they cleared out a lot of rainforest, destroyed a bunch of rainforest, and as soon as the natives died out, they started to bring African slaves and they made them work on these fields. Now, people don't realize that out of the about approximately 11 million Africans who were brought over to the Americas as slaves, more than 50% of them ended up on these sugarcane fields. Okay, so this is something I believe is very important for people to understand when it comes to the history of sugar. So this is basically the time when the days of the big sugar started. Till then, it was such a rare commodity that it really wasn't present in our culture, in the world as Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, it's very important to understand that one of the biggest push for slavery was that we needed people to work on these brutal fields and create, and we needed workforce. So many historians believe that slavery did not come out of racism, but racism was basically created so as a part of justifying putting people in these brutal work conditions and making them work. So in my opinion, and actually historians' opinion, and I stole this opinion from them, sugar production was a huge push towards racism and towards slavery in our culture and civilization as human beings. Now, this was very effective. Slave work was very effective, and sugar prices started to drop. Eventually, for middle classes, sugar became available, and eventually also for the lower classes, it became available. So more and more people started to consume it. So just that you have some sort of concept. Now, that was 1493, right, when Columbus went on his second trip to the Americas. Now, at 1700, an average Englishman had about 4 pounds of added sugar in their diet per year. 4 pounds per year, 1700. By 1800, that went up to 18 pounds. Okay, 18 pounds, big. Now, by 1870, it went up to 47 pounds. All right, huge jump. By 1900, it was 100 pounds. Today, according to USDA, an average American consumes somewhere around 150 to 170 pounds of sugar per year, and you're not even aware of it. Most people are not aware of it. People are like, no, it's not me, it's someone else. Well, no, it's average. And when there are some people out there scooting around like myself, eating less than 5 pounds a year, let's say there's another person who's walking around who's eating 300 plus pounds a year. All right, so this is a big problem. People need to understand data and information that's out there. So it's a serious problem, and it's a sneaky problem. It's not in your face, it's not obvious. So, and that's why the presentation, and that's why I'm trying to talk about these things, because it's superbly important. When it comes to well-being of every aspect of you as a human being, understanding sugar consumption on every level is just superbly important. So, very interesting subject for me. Why the heck are we so fascinated by sugar? Why does it taste so good? Why are we craving it? Everyone wants to understand it. A lot of people come to me and tell me, well, I try to listen to my body. My body tells me I need to have that Oreo cookie, right? So we need to understand, why are we craving it? So I want to tell you guys the story of why we're craving it. Well, how did that develop? Let's say back about 22, 23, 24 million years ago, apes were consuming in Africa fruit all year long, morning till evening. The taste for it was very important for survival. Okay? Now, around 17 million years ago, there was the ice age that started. So there was a cool down, the ice cap started to rise up in the north, oceans started to drop down. So apes started to wander out of Africa, and they went into Eurasian forests. Now the cooling continued to drop. Eventually, seasonal forests developed. In seasonal forests, unfortunately, during some parts of the year, there was very little fruit, or none whatsoever. So, of course, there were seasons when there was a lot of fruit available. So one day there was a mutation amongst these apes, and that mutation was that that ape was able to store fructose very effectively, right? And that was an insanely huge advantage when it comes to survival. It was such a successful mutation that today, if you examine every single ape, and also if you look at the Homo sapiens sapiens, we all have this mutation. We are able to store fructose incredibly effectively. That got us through the lean seasons, the years when food was not available, or the seasons when there was no food available whatsoever. So more you were able to store, better you were off. So I think that's very important to understand, and I'm continuing from here. So we are basically, as I said, 150 to 170 pounds of sugar per year. Now that comes out to be about 22.7 teaspoons a day. Okay, so that you understand what is that? Teaspoons, okay, that's a lot, but how much is that? If you would want to have that sugar by eating eggs, you would need to eat about 453 eggs. Okay? You would need to eat about 1,135 cups of rice to have that sugar. You would need to eat 27 ears of corn and 7 sweet red apples. Okay? So if you would want to have that in your day. Not from sugar, but from something else. Not from added sugar, it's from something else. So you were not aware of these numbers, and most people are not aware of these numbers whatsoever. And the reason for that, because most of the sugars that you eat are hidden. Hidden in low-fat yogurts, it's hidden in fruit juices, ketchups, pretzels, wheat breads, baked goods, deli meats, and other deli products. It's all there, and people are not aware of it. And I want to tell you about it a little bit further, why it's there, and how it actually works in your body. So, now, also about sugar, a big misunderstanding. It's not about the calories that sugar represents. It's nothing to do with the calories, that it's a garbage calorie, not at all. It's not about that it's a non-food. It's about that it's toxic to your system, okay? It's toxic to your system to the level where it's poison. And keep in mind, there are no scientists who argue this. There is no scientific argument that, no, it's not toxic, no, it's not poisonous. It is poisonous, it is toxic. It is just people don't realize it, they don't know it. So that's why I'm going to make the following points. Now, during these past 25 years, an average American, if you compare, they weigh 25 pounds more. Okay, so 25 years ago, we all average weight 25 pounds less. Okay, so what the heck happened during this past 25 years? Now, what is 25 pounds? I actually brought in a 25-pound plate here for you guys, so you understand what that is. Because people just numbers thrown out there, it makes no difference. So I actually brought in a plate. This is 25 pounds. All right? So, could you please come out just for 1 second? Just hang on to this. Please, just for 1 second. just grab this for 1 second. Okay? See, that's heavy, right? So we are all average. We are this much heavier today, thank you very much, than we were 25 years ago. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I think it's important, sometimes when you go to a gym or you come around something, just lift up 25 pounds and see how it is. Okay, it is really scary. And that's not long time ago, back in history, comparing it to now. 25 years ago, we were pretty much all alive here, I think. Yeah, so that was when Madonna was, the #1 thing. So, all right. So obviously 25 pounds is very uncomfortable. To scoot around with extra 25 pounds, it is really difficult on your joints and all that stuff. But that's not really the most important thing about it. Okay? So, whenever scientists start to examine and try to research every single illness that human beings have, sooner or later they come across the information that sugar had a huge role in every single human illness. Okay? So, and people don't choose to be obese. People don't choose to be overweight. There's a lot of people who make judgments on people who have extra weight on, and they're constantly judging them, and they say they just don't care. That is not the case. The case is that people don't understand. There is a lot of misinformation that's circulating around, and there is a lot of advertisement-induced misguidance when it comes to sugar and related problems. And if there is still a doubt in your mind about this, just look at children. Children don't choose to be obese nor overweight. There is an epidemic of obese 6-month-olds going on in the United States. People don't understand. If you look at children's formulas, baby formulas, more than 50% of them is sugar, and most of them coming out of high fructose corn syrup. So this is an important subject on every single level, not just on your individual level, but for your families and for society itself. So is it possible that we've just been eating more this past 25 years? That's what's going on? Well, that's something interesting to think about, because 25 years ago the food was there. So why didn't we eat the food back then? Why do we eat it now? It's not like it was a starvation period 25 years ago, not at all. So how come we are eating more and we didn't eat back then? What is it that used to stop us, and now that stopping mechanism don't really work in our system? So that's when we start to sort of touch the surface of what sugar does to you. Why don't our leptin, a hormone that comes from your fat cells, tells your brain that you had enough to eat? Why doesn't that leptin tell your brain that you had enough? Okay? So there is something wrong. Our capability of stop eating has drastically changed this past 25 years. So where is the extra food coming from? Now think about the past 25 years. Huge obsession with low-fat stuff. It's not coming from fat. You know, back in the early 1900s, an average individual ate about 20 pounds of butter. Today, they eat about 4 pounds of butter a year. Okay, so it dropped down significantly. So it's not coming from fat. It's not coming from protein. Protein intake also dropped tremendously. All right, so it is coming from carbohydrates. Now, 45% went up soft drink consumption this past 25 years. 40% fruit drink consumption went up this past 25 years. Okay, that's a huge increase. Now that you understand how does that work, I'll give you the so-called CocaCola Secret. Okay, it's not something I made up. This is something that someone came up with it, and I think it's wonderful. So I'll explain it to you. It's a very simple way to understand what is really going on. So let's take Coca-Cola, but you could also take Gatorade. You could also take a whole bunch of other of these drinks. Let's just take Coca-Cola. All right. What's in Coca-Cola? What is one thing? Let's say caffeine. Everyone knows caffeine, right? Okay, so it makes you hyper, right? And the funny thing is, when sugar is consumed together with caffeine, it's more highly addictive. Sugar is addictive anyway, but especially when you consume it with caffeine, it's very addictive. Also, caffeine is a diuretic, meaning makes you go to the bathroom a lot, right? So you lose water. So you have caffeine in there. There's a lot of sodium, huge amount of salt in Coca-Cola, 55 gram. That's insane. Milligram. I'm sorry, milligram. That's huge amount. That's like a pizza. So you basically have a liquid pizza that you drink, right? Now, if you ever tried to drink some liquid with that much sodium in it, without the presence of sugar, you would know that it's impossible to drink. It's just awful. It tastes awful. So they need to balance out the taste with something, and that's sugar, right? So you can actually drink it. So now you have something that dehydrates the heck out of you, makes you want more, because basically you're getting dehydrated while you're drinking salt, which makes you thirstier, so you want more. So this is what's really going on when you're drinking these soft drinks, when you're drinking, you know, even fruit juices, believe it or not, but I'll come back to that in a bit. So I believe that companies just don't realize what it really does to your system. I'm an utter optimist, and I'm not willing to believe that they know what it does to a human being. Yeah. So, okay, so there's a correlation between obesity and type 2 diabetes. There's gazillions of studies out there and research shows that. There's also a parallel between sugar-sweetened soft drinks and type 2 diabetes, and what's in most sugar-sweetened drinks, soft drinks, is high fructose corn syrup, right? This is something that really in our food since 1973, so it's not something that's been around for a long time. It was only discovered in 1966 by a Japanese scientist. So an average American consumes about 63 pounds of high fructose corn syrup per year. That's a lot, especially once you understand what it does to your system and what's happening with it in your system. Now, it is cheaper and it is sweeter than normal sugar. Okay? The cheaper is good for the companies, but it's sweeter. So one would think, well, if it's sweeter, then I would just drink less of it because it's sweeter, so it satisfies me. But that doesn't happen. We don't drink less of it. And why don't we drink less of it? That's what we're going to get to. So as I said, sodas and these kind of drinks is not just empty calories. Okay? They are toxins and poison by itself, and that's what you need to understand. Now, before these added sugars were available, we consumed all our sugars from fruit, right? And that basically came out to be about 15 gram per day coming from fruits. That's about 24 pounds of sugar per year. Okay, that's all coming from fruit. But there's something else in fruit that's not in any of these drinks and any of these foods that's very high in sugar, which is fiber. Okay, fiber is basically the balances out sugar in nature. Nature is amazing. Whenever it presents a poison, it always gives the antidote with it. Okay, higher something in sugar, it's higher in fiber as well. Look at the sugar cane, right? For example, very high in sugar. Try to chew on that sucker. You know, good luck. You're gonna have really good teeth. So, are we generally talking eating more? Not really. It is we're eating more carbohydrates, significantly more carbohydrates. Adolescents today, just you guys understand numbers, they eat about 72.8 grams per day of these added sugars. Now, 12%, this is 12% of their total caloric intake, which is absolute insanity. You know, 12% is coming from added sugars for adolescents today. About 1/4 of them getting all that out of high fructose corn syrup. So fat is going down, sugar is going up, and we are getting less and less and less healthy and sicker. This past 25 years, the numbers ain't looking good when it comes to any of those serious illnesses, right? So why did that happen? It had many political reasons, you know, behind all this. Nixon picked out the goal that tried to balance food prices, because balanced food prices are good for politics. And they brought in high fructose corn syrup, which balanced out sugar prices around the world, which was great for politics, awful for the average Joe. So as I said, it's very cheap. That's why politically it makes sense to push it out there. It's made its way into to a lot of different foods, as I described it to you guys. Now, there was also a huge push in 1982 from USDA, MA, and AHA to stop eating fat for people, because they realized that LDL is a major factor when it comes to cardiac arrest and all these kind of problems, right? The cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. But they didn't really take into consideration that there are two different types of bad cholesterol. One is not so bad, the other one is bad, right? So this LDL has two different types of it, all right? That's in your bloodstream. One of them is very light. It just bubbles around in your bloodstream, it doesn't sit down, it's very light. And the other one is very heavy, it sits down, it clogs your arteries. Now guess what? Which one comes from animal fat? The light bubbly one. Which one comes from, the heavy one comes from sugar while it's being broken down in your liver. That's coming from sugar. So the heavy ones come from sugar. So when you think you're eating a low-fat diet because you eat a high-carb diet, which is automatically what happened during these past 25 years, you actually ate a high-fat diet. You were just not aware of it. All right? So that's the scary part. So, last 30 years we removed a bunch of fat, right? We add into a bunch of sugar, and also we remove a good chunk of fiber. Now, why did we remove fiber? When you remove fiber, the shelf life increases in foods, right? Also, it's easier to cook. It's also easier to freeze. Now, just that you understand how much fiber we are missing, okay? So, back before civilization kicked into high gear, let's say 30,000 years ago, an average human being ate about 150 to 300 grams of fiber per day. Today, an average American consumes about 12. Okay? So it's not like there's different species. 30,000 years ago, we were exactly the same genetically, zip change. But that's the amount of fiber we used to have, and we have very little of it today. Okay? So also, by the way, the past 25 years, we also added a bunch of trans fats in there, which now everyone knows that it's bad for you, so they're effectively removing it, but that was also something they added in there. That's also important, I think, to sort of keep in mind. Now, you need to sort of understand some basic things about biochemistry. Okay? Very basic. I'm really trying to boil it down with the most basic things. So it's still somewhat a little bit entertaining at least. Now, sugars have this browning effect. Browning effect is basically when you put on the grill something and you put a sugary sauce over top and it sort of browns, right? Now the same thing happens in your arteries. Okay, so that's important to sort of understand. Now, when it comes to fructose, it has 7 times more of these browning effects as opposed to glucose, for example. Now, fructose does not suppress the hunger hormone, the ghrelin. So that basically means that you drink a can of soda before you eat food, and your system will not know that you have food in you. So your brain will think there's nothing in you, okay? Because it doesn't allow that to happen. So you don't know when to stop. The brain doesn't have the signal that, hey dude, you had enough. You just keep eating, keep eating, keep eating. That's what's happening, okay? What happens when you have acute fructose hits your system, meaning one of these, cans of soda, for example, or something really high in sugar, right? It's actually, it doesn't stimulate insulin, okay? So what basically that means is that it doesn't stimulate leptin in your system as well. That means, again, that your brain doesn't see that you're eating something, so it makes you eat more. Okay, when you're hungry, you're eating, your brain doesn't sense it, so it's wanting you to eat more. So it increases the amount you want to eat as you're eating. Now, in the liver, fructose behaves drastically differently than glucose. Now, you need to understand about glucose that it's something that every living creature and cell uses for energy. Okay, so glucose is not a bad thing. I'm talking about fructose. It's an important difference. Now, fructose alone causing metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome, this is, again, I'm not going to go into it deeper, but just that you understand that there's no research out there that says this is not true. Okay, so metabolic syndrome, what is metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome is a combination of a bunch of different illnesses. Combine obesity, type 2 diabetes, lipid problems, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. These are all together, they call metabolic syndrome. That means every system basically in your body is affected significantly, all right? So fructose breaks down and creates this metabolic syndrome. Now let's quickly look at 3 sugars. How are they different from one to another? Because there is such a thing, just like you guys know, there are bad fats and good fats. There's also bad carbs and good carbs. And you need to have a basic understanding of that for you to be able to change that in your life. So what happens, let's say 2 pieces of bread, okay, that gives you X amount of calories, right? Just that you understand. We are talking about, let's say, just a couple of pieces of bread. So this is, gets into your system, the glucose gets into your system, it goes into your liver, it creates, your liver creates glycogen out of it, okay? Now, what do you think? Is it possible for you to create too much glycogen in your liver? No, actually you can't. It's not toxic, it's not a toxin, so you can't create too much glycogen in your system. It doesn't poison you, all right? So now, of course, if you're not active enough, then there is some excess energy that comes from, could come from glucose as well, and your body is going to start to store it as fat. But glucose does affect your leptin and your brain sensing that you are eating, so it stops when you're full. So it's a very small amount of it converted into fat because your brain senses that you ate something. All right, so there's a mechanic in place which stops you from overeating. All right, when it comes to glucose. Now, what happens when you have ethanol, right? What's ethanol? It's basically alcohol, yeah? So one of the favorites of most people. Now, what happens when your system is exposed to acute ethanol? You're drunk, okay? What happens to your system when you're drunk? You have your central nervous system depression, hypothermia, myocardial depression, respiratory depression, loss of motor control, we all know all that, hypoglycemia, and diuresis, meaning you go to the bathroom a lot. So there's a few other things, but just basically this is what's going on. And because of all this, we limit it, right? You just can't go crazy about it because at one point you gotta stop, okay? Because it affects your brain, okay? Ethanol is also broken down in the brain partially, so your brain is affected by the whole situation. So there's a stop to it. We limit it. We even legally limit it. You can't drive, for example, right, and drink. And so there are many limitations as a society we put around it, and as an individual also you put limitations for yourself around it because there's a feedback mechanism. Now, what happens is you have about 4 times more of ethanol hits your liver than when it comes to glucose. So there's more that goes to your liver. Also, during the breakdown of ethanol, there is the aldehydes that are being created. Aldehydes are basically that can cause cancer as long as your system is weak enough, as long as the right amount comes in. It is something that can lead to cancer over time. So that's something else that happens with ethanol that doesn't happen with glucose. During the process of breaking down, it creates a damage in your liver, right? It creates a damage because it breaks down the protein in your liver. And when there's enough of the protein broken down in your liver, eventually your liver can shut even down with alcoholics, right? So we all know about that. The reason, because ethanol breaks down the protein inside your liver. So that's also important. There's a huge amount of fat being created. It's more than twice as much as for glucose. It creates insulin resistance, which leads to type 2 diabetes. Also, it generates inflammation in your liver. So there's a whole bunch of different things, and we talked about inflammation briefly. We will go into it more later, what inflammation can create in your system. So there's a whole bunch of different things that happens when you consume ethanol as opposed to when you consume glucose. Now, when it comes to fructose, let's say, so that was, let's just imagine 2 slices of bread, 1 shot of short drink. Okay, that's about, balances out, about calorie intake is the same. Now, 1 glass of orange juice, okay, when you drink that, that's about, calorie intake is about the same as these other 2 cases. So 1 glass of orange juice, and that's fructose. Let's examine fructose, what it does to you. There's a huge misconception. Just because it comes from fruit, it's good for me. That's what everyone thinks. I should drink, fruit juice because it comes from fruit, it's good for me. Just because something comes from nature, that doesn't mean you should have it. You need to have a better understanding of what's out in nature. I always tell people arson also comes from nature. It doesn't mean you should have it, okay? I know it's kind of arsenic, yeah, it's kind of, sounds crazy, but both of them are toxins. They're just different type of poisons for you, different type of toxins. And that's what I'm slowly getting to. Now, so, only the liver can metabolize fructose, nothing else in your system. Just with other many poisons, the same thing happens, so only your liver can metabolize it. That's very important. During the breakdown of fructose, uric acid is being created. So do you guys know what kind of illness uric acid causes? Gout, exactly. Gout, for example. Also hypertension. Uric acid blocks enzymes in your blood vessels. The enzymes it blocks are the enzymes which keep your blood pressure low. So it actually creates high blood pressure because it blocks the enzymes that keep your blood pressure low. So that's important. Hypertension epidemic is going on in our Western world, and it is caused by fructose. It's very important. Loads of fat being created during the breakdown of it. You're taking glucose, hardly any of them is really transferred into fat, but when you drink fructose, 30% of it is made into fat. Okay, 30% of it. That's a pretty high number. So you're using a high-fat diet while you're taking fructose. That's important to understand. Sports drinks. Now, how did this all happen that sports drinks became so high in added sugars? Well, it's let's take Gatorade as an example, right? Gatorade used to be a drink. I don't know if you guys ever drank it originally with the original formula. It was an awful tasting substance. It did affect you towards the positive when your system was down during high performance athletic endeavors, but it really tasted bad. Then a company bought Gatorade and they changed and they added a bunch of high fructose corn syrup into Gatorade, all right? So if you look at an elite athlete during high performance, when they are depleted their glycogen storages, when they hit the wall, for example, okay, and you give them high fructose corn syrup, they can replenish their glycogen storages faster. It is true, but elite athletes don't drink that thing. They really don't. I work with a lot of them. They don't. They would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. There are some rare cases out there, but it's very rare. Elite athletes, they don't drink that to be healthy, okay? Who drinks that? Children drink it, and the average general population drink that. And not because you're depleted from heavy-duty physical activity, okay? So So keep that in mind. That's the reason why all these sports drinks are loaded with these things. In theory, it's good for you. In practicality, it doesn't do diddly squat for you, unless you're squatting a lot. So there are many, many different studies out there, but it shows that when you take, even just for 6 days, healthy individuals, and you give them the amount of high fructose corn syrup that an average American takes in every day, within 6 days, they double the triglycerides in their blood, which is the bad type of fat in their blood. Only in 6 days, okay? Doubles it. That's quite wild. Now, some of the fat doesn't make it out of your liver. It stays in your liver, creates a fatty liver. And unfortunately, how much of it stays there depends a lot about if you're a Caucasian, if you're an African American, if you're Hispanic. For African Americans and Hispanics, there's more of them, you know, so it's much easier for them to create a fatty liver than for Caucasians. That doesn't mean Caucasians don't. They're also very fatty liver. It's just a different ratio. So it's bad for everyone, period. Important to understand. But there is also, I believe, unfortunately, that African Americans and Hispanics should have much more education about this because it's affecting them. Their system for this particular thing is even more sensitive. So insulin in the liver is basically blocked because of high fructose corn syrup, and it can't do its job. Insulin can't do its job. This will make your pancreas work harder to create more insulin. So you're going to have this insulin levels skyrocket, which increases your blood pressure again, and further making your system make more fat, withhold more fat. And all the energy goes to your fat cells in your system. Okay, so, and furthers obesity again in your system. So there's multiple levels how this works. So it's not just that you drink certain calories and it goes into fat. No, it slowly throws your whole system off, and on many different avenues you just get more obese, fatter, and your system functions less efficiently. Now higher your insulin, less your brain can sense the leptin. Okay, again, the leptin is the hormone that tells your brain that you have stuff in you. So again, it further makes you want to have more. So I keep repeating myself, but I'm not really. These are different avenues how it's affecting your brain, okay, and affecting your whole system. So it basically affects your whole energy consumption in your body. So it's not about the calories, it's about how it toxifies your whole system, how it is poisoning you as you're eating it. Now, also that you understand, if you shoot sugar into your bloodstream, just like, you know, cocaine and heroin, it's exactly the same reward center stimulated in your brain, just like with cocaine and heroin. So it is that way an addictive drug. That's why it's so hard to get off of it. You know, no one tells you that it's illegal. You know, there are no obvious signs of it that you're eating is really breaking you down, because it's not an acute toxin. It's a chronic toxin. So it's not like ethanol, right, alcohol, where you know it immediately messes you up. This messes you up in the long run. Okay, and because of that, that's why it's so hard to get off of it, because there are no obvious effects of it, except that you realize that 25 years ago you were 25 pounds heavier, you know? So when you compare the serious negative side effects of alcohol and fructose, the breakdown in the system, 8 out of the 12 of the effect of alcohol is affected also, is happening also when you consume fructose. But there are no regulations around it. So ethanol and fructose, once it's broken down, the same quantity in your system behaves the same way. It creates the same problems on the long run, except we would not think twice to give, like, you know, fruit juice to our kid to go to school. We would never give them, you know, a can of beer, right? Take that to school, drink it, right? And do this every day because it's good for you. Because we think fruit juices are good for us, so we do that. Fruit juice is just sugar, there's nothing in it. After about 22 minutes, every single possible vitamin that was in there after they squeezed it out of that plant, that's gone. So it's just sugar water, nothing else. It just looks good, it was advertised well, so everyone thinks it's good. It's zip to do with good health, okay? So, there's a few things you can do to sort of start to make changes in your life. okay? And there is a methodology, if you follow, it will clean your system quite significantly. Number one, no sugar drinks of any type. Okay? No good sugar beverages. There's no such thing. No fruit juice, nothing like that. Eat carbs with fiber. Okay? Eat carbs with fiber. Then wait 20 minutes before you consume a second portion, because it takes a while for your brain to realize that there's stuff in you, food in you. All right? And a lot of times, if you just give it a little time, you realize that I'm actually good. I'm full. I'm good. Also, balance out your inactivity with activity. That means if you want to watch 30 minutes of TV, walk 30 minutes. So think about it as checks and balances, right? If I want to have some resting, I need to move a little bit. I'm not telling you to exercise the heck out of yourself, just go for a walk. Okay, honey, let's watch Homeland tonight. Well, that's 45 minutes, let's go for a walk before or after. You know? So try to balance it out. If you have to sit at work, see if you have a way to sort of stand up a fair bit as well throughout work hours. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I know this company is fairly flexible, so maybe you guys can manage standing up and down a little bit more. It makes a difference, makes a heck of a difference in the long run. Now, why is that exercise is important? Is it because it burns calories? Not really. I mean, if you think about it, if you start to make calculations how much energy you burn when you exercise, I mean, if you eat a sandwich, you would need to run for 4 hours. You know, that's not why exercise is important. Exercise is important because it creates insulin sensitivity. Okay, so your brain is going to be able to sense what you put in your system more effectively. Okay, you become more insulin sensitive. That's a good thing. Reduces stress. It's a natural stress balancing mechanism, physical movement. Obesity and stress, by the way, goes hand in hand. So more stressed out you are, more obese you are, more stressed out you are. Two things goes hand in hand. So, and these natural stress reducing mechanism like exercise is very handy, and you don't need anything. You have your body, you can just move. Now, also exercise detoxifies fructose, so it gets it through your system faster, it gets it out. Whatever is in there, it gets it out, meaning increases your metabolism. So even when if you exercise in the morning, let's say you go for an hour speed walk, I'm just giving you an example, you sit down at work, throughout the whole day, your metabolism is going to be higher. Okay, so even while you're sitting, your body is going to use up more energy. So that's good. So you want to increase metabolism with exercising. And when you do it, that's important. It's a good idea to move in the morning, you know, for most people, because especially when it comes to office workers, because then all day long when you're less active, your metabolism works on a higher level. If you sit at the office all day long and then you go to exercise when you're done working, soon you go to sleep after that, so you had a very small window of your metabolism being elevated. But if you do it in the morning, all day long your metabolism is higher. Depending on what kind of activity you do, you can change what kind of metabolism, metabolic effect you're going to get. For example, you do resistance training, that means doing some mild weightlifting or doing some body weight exercises can elevate your metabolic level up to 72 hours after the exercise. Okay, so it affects your metabolism up to 72 hours. So if you go to do one of those cardio machines, for example, as soon as you stop, your metabolism is stopped being effective. Okay, we will talk much more about exercising in the upcoming sessions, so you understand there is difference between this type of exercise and that type of exercise. It's not like one is bad and the other one is good, but every single one of them has its ups, okay, and it has its downs too, because movement is also stress. But right now we are talking about that this is a pumping mechanism, movement and exercise. It helps you to clean this excess fructose and fat out of your system. So why is fiber important? Now, I alluded earlier that we used to eat much more fiber. It helps your system to clean itself a little bit better. The only time when you have to be careful with fiber when you're very stressed out. Okay, when you're very stressed out and you eat fiber, your digestive system can shut down because it's a stressful situation, and the fiber can stay in your tummy, and the bacteria and all that stuff starts to sort of grow in there. All right, so if you're really stressed out, you want to be careful with fiber. All right, but we'll go into that again in the future. But generally talking, it's a good idea to eat your sugars with fiber as much as possible. So, as I said, keep in mind, as you learned it in the early 80s, there are bad fats and good fats. Now it's time to learn it. There are bad carbs and good carbs as well. Okay, so start to think about, you want to have something sweet because you're craving it, just have fruit. Okay, and start to be reading labels so you understand how much sugar is in everything, you know, so you can make those choices, okay, step by step. Now, I also like to tell people, I talked about the history of sugar, and I try to get every single anchor with people and clients I work with to try to reach in them and get an emotional involvement. So I also tell people that when you consume all these products with added sugars, you're somewhat buying into the bad aspect of history, you know? And so just honor yourself, honor all these lovely ideas that we have out there, you know, that we in America, we stand for equality and all that stuff. I believe when you eat a lot of sugar, you're buying into those bad ideas that happened a long time ago. So motivate yourself every way you can, you know, because the things that saved us at one point throughout our evolutionary history might end up killing us, not just as individuals, but our whole society. You know, there is a reason why all these illnesses and everything is around, and we need to sort of put a stop to it. And we all are responsible to take a good care with ourselves and with our children and everyone who's in our family. So having this understanding about sugar, I hope it's going to help you to sort of rethink this aspect of your life. Every time when you eat something, you look at labels so you understand better how much sugar you consume. And then once you have the understanding, you can make the change. Okay, so let me see how we're doing here. Wow, that's really good. So this was about sugar. Now, previously we talked about a few other subjects, and I wanted to ask you guys if you have any question regarding the meditation. Any of you guys had the chance to attempt again? Okay, so why don't we do it again? Okay, so we have next week another seminar. So let's play around with the idea. How about if we all try just 8 minutes every day to do our little meditation? So I'll tell you again. Okay, well, 3 positions. I offer you guys 3 positions. 8 minutes. One of them is you simply stand and close your eyes. And then you focus on your nose, breathe on your nose, and as the air comes in your nose, you try to follow it, and then let it go. And then next time you inhale again, follow the breath, and let it go. That's all you pay attention to for 8 minutes. And as I said before, you're not going to succeed, right? But the attempt itself will improve you and helps you to work on your focus. And people usually are blown away that, oh my God, I can't focus for longer than 5 seconds. And it's going to be probably 5 seconds. And after 5 seconds, you catch yourself thinking about, what am I going to wear later on today? And then, 2 minutes later, you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm meditating right now. Wow, what a low life I am. I can't even focus on this. I will never meditate. Well, the process of meditation is the attempt to playing with the idea and see how much you can focus on one simple task. And as I said before, you practice these little things. Over time, you will understand how you can use that kind of focus in everything you do. Okay, so the first position was standing. Second position, you can just simply go to a wall. You sit down, cross your legs, doesn't really matter. Just sit by the wall and just do the same thing. Breathe in and let it go. When you inhale again, focus on your breath. Or if you want to lay down on some hard surface, you can also do that. The idea is to have some sort of sense of your posture while you're doing it. Okay, that also keeps you in the moment a little bit better. So why don't you guys try for 8 minutes every day till next Monday? Okay, so just try, play around with it, and let's see if anything interesting comes up. Okay, and remember, it will be frustrating. That I guarantee that to you. There will be the little voice in your head saying that, what the heck, I can't manage doing this. It's not for me, it's for everyone else. I'm not a Buddhist monk, why the heck am I doing this? But if you ever had the chance to go out camping and you walk in nature, or if, I'm not going to talk about hunting because that's quite irrelevant, but if you even just go out and hike in nature, you realize that how much more you're in the moment right there while you're in nature, because you need to pay attention. Things are going all over. If you don't pay attention, you fall on your face. Now that's meditation as well, you know? It's just this way, if you develop meditation this way, it's very compound of an exercise because you can do it anywhere. I would rather tell you, yeah, go out in nature and hike, but that's less realistic. So let's try, okay? 8 minutes. Sounds good? Okay, let's try. Now, also I brought up the smiling, right? And the up and down idea. Just don't forget to just keep just thinking about that. Can you bring it in somehow into your everyday? Just even if you smile one extra a day, see what it does to the person who you're smiling at, you know? So keep practicing that. We talked about the inflammation a little bit and how every single research nowadays start to look towards that what the inflammation does in your system, which was basically Alzheimer's, any cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and all of these things. Seems like that the long-term effect of inflammation leads to those kind of deformations in the human body. Now, when there is inflammation, there is a lot of bad type of bacteria in your system, and again, bad type of bacteria are feeding on sugar. So when you're cutting the sugar away from your system, you're giving your body, the inflammations to sort of taper away in your system as well, because you're starving those bad bacteria, because they're feasting on sugar only. So if you're decreasing the sugar in your diet to the level where a normal human being should have it, you're starving those bad bacteria, so you're helping your system to overcome inflammations as well that are hidden in your system. Inflammation can be in your gum regularly, it can be in your stomach, in your brain to a smaller level, and the problem with this low-level inflammation is that you don't have pain receptors around those areas. I mean, you have it around your gums, but you don't have it in your brain or in your gut, so it's easy to have it and you're not even aware of it, okay? So as you start to eat less sugar, what a lot of times happens, there's a sort of die-off period that happens in your system. All the bad bacteria starting to die off slowly, so a lot of people can get skin rashes for a while, you know, because the poisons are leaving your system, all right? So that will, you know, stop at one point. So you just need to hang in there. So don't stop what you're doing. And you're gonna feel awful as you're dropping, you know, the sugar intake in your everydays, because your system literally forgot how to function efficiently. It requires some time for it to relearn how to generate efficient amount of energy and everything properly. So as you're cutting the sugar out, be ready. You will have a few days, a few weeks when you're like, oh my God, what the heck is going on? If you go absolutely cold turkey and you really decided, I'm just gonna do a great job cutting out all sugar, you will have guaranteed 2 days of headaches, okay? So it is something that's happening to your system because a lot of stuff starts to die out and your system is showing effect, but it will come back to balance. So just hang in there, all right? So also it's a good idea to consult with your doctor if you want to make steps like this. It's a good idea to tell your doctor, hey doctor, I'm going to try to eat less sugar. Is that okay with you, right? And then maybe your doctor throws a few curves in there and helps you with some things. Again, I'm very optimistic. So, yes?
Are you taking questions?
Yes,
That
please.
was a question.
No,
I
yes.
have a very specific question.
Yes.
Concerning beverages. Kombucha. Do you have a thought on that type of drink?
Yeah, you know, I mean, kombucha is an interesting one. Fermented drinks are generally talking a good idea. It can create some sort of probiotic effect in your gut. Okay, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. The problem is it really depends on the acidity of your system. You know, now it's very hard to sort of just see from the outside if someone is, you know, high acidic or not. So it's hard to tell someone if kombucha is good for you or not just simply by looking at them, okay? Also, if you have a lot of bad bacteria in your system, for example, kombucha can give more food for those as well in a weird way, you know? So it is a tough one to really just for me to say it's good for you or not, you know? It's just like there's some foods that if, let's say, someone very healthy eats, it will affect them positively. Another individual who's not healthy will eat the same food and it affects them negatively. Fruit can be like that too. Fruit can be very bad for someone, for example, who has a very high candida level, for example, in their system. You know, so for a very healthy individual, fruit will nourish them and makes them better. So these kind of questions only can be answered specifically to the individual. So go to your doctor, have some tests done perhaps.
Western medicine doctor? Sorry for that question,
of course,
I think that question doesn't always...
It doesn't always, no.
It's
but
not always well received.
Yeah.
Especially with today's medicine, it's like, okay, you're here for that one reason alone, so we're going to talk about your toe.
Yeah, let me tell you one thing when it comes to choosing your doctor, for example. Step number one, anyone without any medical background can make. Look at your doctor. Does this person look like someone who I should listen to? Okay? There's no human being should be listened to who can't take care of their own lives, right? So the doctor needs to look healthy. That's number one. If your doctor doesn't look healthy, I wouldn't take advice from them. Why? You know? Like, how can someone advise someone who's not healthy? So if you choose your doctor that way, chances are, if you go to a very healthy doctor, you ask them that question, they will have a much more holistic way of answering that, you know? So choose your doctor wisely, and then your question is gonna be not valid.
Okay.
But you understand what I mean, you know?
Yes.
But also we are lucky. In Los Angeles, there are so many great doctors around, you know, so you have a choice to pick and choose. But this is an easy way to choose. One of the gentlemen who I worked with for a long period of time, he teaches a lot of seminars. And he came in a lot of times without his, you know, no shirt on him. He's like, anyone who works in the health industry should walk around naked. You need to, you know, if I can't, you know, show myself, you know, how I am, then what the hell am I talking about? You know, I can't talk about stuff if I can't put them myself into practice, right? So, yes?
Just back to what you were saying about sugar and inflammation. Is all sugar cause inflammation, or is it more so the refined stuff that you were saying is bad and we consume yearly, or is it better? Is it safer to have the sugar from fruit, or is it?
Yeah, you know what? I would say if everyone would just simply switch to eat only sugar from fruit, meaning you eat an apple and whatever sugar is in there, that's fine. You eat blueberry, whatever sugar is in there is fine. But if you go to a juicing place and you squeeze the stuff out of it, that's already different. You're not going to have the fiber with it. That's already, you know, nature always brings the antidote with the poison, right? So it's a balanced food that way. And keep in mind, that way automatically you will limit the amount of sugar intake because there's only so much apples you can eat. You're not going to eat 5 apples sitting, right? But you can easily just eat, like, you know, 4 pieces of bread, let's say, or 5 pieces of bread, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
So fruit sugar does not cause inflammation?
No, it's, again, keep in mind, it is, depends on how much inflammation is in your system. Because if you have a lot of inflammation in your system, yes, even sugar from fruit can further worsen your situation. So first, number one, know what is going on inside of you. As you guys might remember, I alluded to this before, that our job in this world is know thyself. Part of understanding what is going on inside of you is understanding what kind of inflammation level is going on inside of me. Once you have an understanding of that, you can make an educated answer, you know, give yourself an educated answer. You know, every doctor, if they look at inflammation in your system and look at the mold levels in your system and candida levels and all that stuff, they will look at it, and a normal doctor would tell you, okay, this is way too high. You should really try to limit your, you know, carbohydrate intake for X amount of time. There is a very good study out there, which I actually use constantly with my clients, which is basically if someone has elevated mold and candida levels and bad bacteria levels in their system for a while, I even ask them to go as low as 33 grams of carbs altogether per day. Now 33 grams, that's really, really low. I'm not saying to eat like that for the rest of your life. Just for a while for your system to have a chance to clean things out. Now keep in mind, you can't just necessarily make without any kind of tests and understanding what is going on inside of you, make that decision that, okay, I'm just gonna eat 33 grams because it might be too harsh on your system from where you're at, okay? But when I deal with, let's say, athletes, you know, who are already taking good care of themselves, they clean stuff out, this is a step we make to really clean everything out, okay? But a modification of that sort of direction might be useful for you or for anyone, you know, to really try to cut the carbs down. So as I said, yes, fruit-based sugar can be good for you, but depending on for who. Again, I'm sorry I can't give more specific answer, but you know, you understand what I'm saying. Yes?
So, what do you do, like what tests are ran to determine the inflammation or how the level of inflammation in your body?
Okay, so I think it's a very wise thing for anyone to sort of look at the candida level in your system. When there is an elevated candida level, there is inflammation. That is the simplest thing, you know? Of course, there is many other things that you can test, and there's a lot of information you can get from tests. And I always tell people, and at one point everyone gets superbly interested to understand what is really going on so they can clean house. Because once you're on a roll, you know, then you will see that you're interested more, and you want to be more proactive about your own health. But just checking out candida levels, it's a wise one. And then you go online and you start to read about candida and understand what can you do to decrease it. And then what you need to do to decrease it, it's also good for all kinds of inflammation in your system. Yes?
So, but if you go to your general practitioner, he's not going to give you this test. So how do you go about getting this kind of a test?
Well, there are plenty of doctors out there, you know, homeopathic doctors, for example, who would be, you know, would be telling you what I'm telling you right now.
So you look up online, doctors that give that type of...
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to sort of direct you guys to different, you know, doctors who I work with effectively for a long time, you know, homeopathic doctors. But yeah, but there's plenty of good homeopathic doctors around California and Los Angeles. This is the home of them, you know. So, yes, there was someone else who's putting their hands up. Yeah,
I have a quick question, and I'm a little confused. So are you saying that as long as you're eating the fruit in its natural state, that's okay, but once you put it into like a smoothie or something, that's destroying the beneficial characteristics, and therefore that's not a good idea?
Yes, it's keep in mind that digestion doesn't happen in your stomach only. Digestion starts from the moment, it's funny, the moment you decide to eat the food, there are certain things that start to happen in your brain, put it in your mouth, and from the breakdown process starts in your mouth, okay? More you break down the food prior, more you process your food prior to intake, you're taking away from your system the chance to sort of have on every level work for you, you know? So yeah, eating a piece of fruit altogether, it will always be more beneficial than, you know, the best fruit juices you can possibly make. I mean, listen, as I described, fruit juices will always taste good. Because as long as you stay, you know, within our species and in the ape species, it will taste good because that's what's so hardwired in us. So there's no way around it. You will never be that healthy that you drink fruit juice and you say, oh, this is really not good. That doesn't happen. As long as you stay a Homo sapiens sapiens, that's going to always taste good.
But I think it's just interesting because there's the smoothie craze, right?
Yeah.
And show, right, and all the.
Of course, because it's highly addictive. So it's a good sell, and it's natural. It's addictive. I mean, that's like perfect when it comes to selling an item, you know? So, yes, you were asking?
Does the same thing apply to vegetable drinks?
Well, vegetable drinks, yes, somewhat. They're also short-chain carbohydrates. I mean, there are different sort of vegetables, but also eat a vegetable the way how it comes, you know, as opposed to in a juiced-up version. Now, there's a very cool YouTube video actually out there, which I'm going to try to get to everyone, perhaps, to just watch it. This is about a lady who was very interesting, her journey. She had a very serious illness, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but she got so broken down that she was only be able to exist in a wheelchair, all right? And she used to be a champion karateka. So, and then the doctors told her that, listen, we can't really fix your problem, and she was taking 2 million different kind of drugs, and then she just got sick of the whole idea. And what she decided, she looked through every single medicine she was taking, and she tried to figure out how much vegetables she would need to eat to have the same amount of, you know, dosage from vegetables. And she quit eating all of her drugs and replaced them with vegetables and fruit. And she started to do that. You know, I don't remember exactly how long it took for her to get out of her problem, but it was unbelievable, her recovery. So now what she does, she travels around the world and she talks about, you know, how to eat food in its natural state as opposed to waiting for some sort of magic pill or magic concoction to make you healthy. You know, so I will get that link to you guys somehow, okay? Yes? Yes?
Now, what about, we were talking about the juicing and stuff, Vitamix, because I used to have a juicer and because of the sugar and all the glucose going out and the fiber, it was making me feel sick. But once I got the Vitamix, nothing goes out. I don't add anything to it, and maybe a little water because it'll be a little thick. But what about that? Because it has everything in it.
Yeah, you know, I like to tell people just instead of having the idea of a cold turkey methodology, which all of us, most of us have, if I want to make a change, okay, let's really make a change. Set up steps, you know, and Vitamix is a great one, you know, to just get you from having all kinds of weird things, and now you're gonna have all the pulp and try to, you know, contain all the fiber closer to its natural state, you know. So it is a good step, no questions, you know. So it is a better than before, and you keep going that way, and eventually you can sort of also perhaps leave that out. Not all the time, you know. You want to also treat yourself, and eventually the most important thing to realize that you don't always think that this is for life. That's where people get scared. If they think, okay, what do you mean? So for the rest of my life, I can't have a cupcake? No, I'm just saying that for a while, clean yourself out. And then once you clean yourself out, you can go to this 80-20 sort of idea. 80% of the time you take good care of yourself, the 20% will take care of itself, you know? So, you know, so Vitamix and stuff like that can come into that. Vitamix is definitely fit into an 80-20 sort of idea, you know? So that's probably not the weakness in one's diet, you know?
I just want to say something about doctors and all that. I've always had a weight problem, and I had swelling in my legs, and I went to the doctor, and he said to me, well, you need to lose weight. That's why your legs are swollen. Yes, well, they should piss me off royally, because that's what he's been telling me all my life. But now that you've explained it, that's what's causing it, then I can understand that maybe he had a point. So, not that I'm going to do anything about it, but just to understand it conceptually.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing when it comes to joint inflammation, for example, knee, a lot of people who have excess weight on them, they have joint pains and aches. Now, the joint aches and pains come from a few different things. One of them is that there's more inflammation in your system, perhaps because of the wrong nutrients that go through your system. That the amount of toxins that's in your system, your body is more susceptible for inflammation. At the same time, you know, if you carry around that 25-pound plate every day, it will be more painful. You know, joints, you're not a tall lady, your joints were made to carry a certain amount of weight. Now you can get away with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years maybe to scoot around with more excess weight, but throughout a lifetime, your joints will be more affected. But the good news is you can reverse that anytime, you know? So if you make little by little steps, it is reversible. The capability of a human body to recover and every organ in our system to recover is unbelievable. I wish people would understand it, because it would really give them hope, you know, that I can really change around my life at any time. Doesn't matter if I'm 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, you can make a difference, you know? I work with people who were 90 plus and made significant changes in their lives, you know? So it is not to do with anything with age. Just because you had it all your life, that means that your system is more sensitive for that average sort of American diet that's out there. You know, there are some people, you know, you guys can see some models out there, right? Walk around skinny and all that stuff, and you're like, wow, they are lucky, they can eat anything and they don't gain weight. There are some systems which can handle the Western diet better than others, you know? If you look at a Samoan, for example, from the islands, right? If you look at them, they are all big. It's because they have a certain gene which is able to superbly well hold on to stuff, right? That was a great advantage for them at one point, and it's a very bad disadvantage right now. So it depends on how lucky you are with your genes. You might be more susceptible for weight gain if you eat the average stuff. That's why you need to figure out what is good for you. And that will only come from you. Keep that in mind. There is no practitioner will ever be able to help you as much as if you write a small diary and you lead a diary and see how you feel. I ate this and this and this today. I went to sleep at this time. Next day I woke up, I felt great. The next day I went to sleep 2 hours later. I ate this and this, woke up, feel like bad. You know? And I know it sounds simple. It is simple, but if you stick to it, it will make a heck of a, you know, huge change in your life by understanding what is good for you, what works for you, you know? So, okay, yes?
What can you do to make your own body release more leptin?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
To release more leptin.
What can you do? Well, easiest thing to do is become more insulin sensitive. So the way how you can make yourself more sensitive is eating less sugar. That is pretty much the easiest thing to do. And when people, you know, people who go to gyms regularly, let's say, you know, there is a huge fashion, even in the most high fashion gyms. If you go in there and you try to eat good, healthy stuff, it's still loaded with sugar. You know, and because of exercising, you know, people want to have more energy and stuff like that. They look at, okay, how much carbs is in this? Oh, I'm gonna get a lot of energy out of this. If you sort of balance that out, you make your brain to be more sensitive, you know, overall. And you know, the desensitization of human beings is something that I brought up before, you know, and it works on every level. So more sensitive you become as a human being, more you're gonna be able to be sensitive to leptin and all of these things as well. You know, so there's many different ways to do it, but generally talking, excluding sugar as much as possible is probably the simplest way to go about it. Okay.
You know, the reason why I asked this is because, so I do go to the gym regularly, and I have for a very, very long time. Typically, I do eat healthy and all that, don't I eat myself much sugar, but I can't control myself from overeating. And I do know, and I've heard from you that leptin, the hormone, helps you to know when to stop. So I'm just trying to figure out how
I see.
to make that.
You know, what would be interesting for you to check out your resting and relaxation idea. You know, what time you go to sleep, for example, how drained you are with, you know, what kind of stresses you have in your life, and look in that direction, because when people are more stressed out, they tend to feel like having more and more food to pick you up. You know, so check out how much coffee you drink and all that stuff. It's a good way to sort of examine, because coffee can, if someone is sort of tired and you need to have coffee to pick you up, that actually drains you more on the long run. So it's a complicated question, and it's, again, it's very individualistic, any of these things, but it's a good idea to check out, you know, how well rested you are, you know, so, okay. Well, I think time is up, guys. So thank you so much for paying attention. You know, thank you.
Like our last week now, he doesn't want you to want something is not right, you know, and my sister is very stuff to it. She's a draft. And she's like, oh my God, you know, so I'm like, I really want to see someone who's like, do like blood tests or do some whatever testing to find out if there is something that's off or that I need to like change.
It's very wise. I think you're on the right track with that. So,
okay. So how do I get it?
The easiest actually don't have
website?
Yeah, easy, or just reach out to Janine and Janine can comment. That's the easiest.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, sure. No problem at all. All right, thank you. Thank you.
My name is Toya.
Hi, Csaba.
That's mine, yeah.
I know, but it's such a difficult test.
It's you need to have a protocol that leads to perfect life. Okay? Now what I mean is that there's a way how a healthy human being should live. Okay, what kind of food they should consume.
Thank you.
That's
It's good.
Yes,
Do the
this
same
is a very
thing.
thing. Yeah. Very informative.
This can be part of it.
If I get those
But
cereal, I'll
you need to have
have
like a procedure that is clear to you.
He said the turkey.
You know,
Is there
where
last
right
week's
now,
Saturday?
why am I
Last
doing
week's
this?
Spanish is better. Okay.
Can y'all keep it down? I'm trying to keep talking a little bit. I'm trying to hear him. Thank you. For real, I'm trying to get right info. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, so once you have that step-by-step understanding, that so you need someone who structures that for you. So I mean, there are, you know, just like with bankers, there are good bankers and crappy ones in any job. There is that, you know. So I would recommend to just have like a holistic doctor who's good at these things and structures it, and if they give you an outline, that's exactly. So I mean, you know, just if you reach out to Janine, you can connect to me, and I'm happy to connect you with some doctors, you know,
Okay.
you know, who have a very good track record when it comes to stuff like this.
Yeah, because just gotta go.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good motivation. I mean, that's what you need.
Okay.
Because you're right.
But vegetables and fruit, I'm okay with.
Yeah, as I said, you know, depending on what is going on in you. But yes, that's a good start
But
for
then
sure.
that also, that's why I was asking the question about the inflammation, because I know the inflammation is there.
Yeah, as I said. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Hey, Csaba.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Great seeing you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
I just wanted to give you a compliment about your desk. I follow you on Instagram.
Oh, right, right.
I saw your desk, and is that the standing desk that you have?
Yeah, I basically put the two together. You know, I mean, I designed a lot of different offices. You know, and you know, obviously there's no reason for one to really sit. You know, so whenever I can imagine this table, especially the one I have, I mean, it looks very clean and simple. And it's really nothing expensive. So I'm usually trying to, when I deal with companies, I try to convince them to make it available for people. You know, so who knows? Maybe sooner or later it's gonna happen.
How did you get the bike? Because I noticed that you have like a bike seat. So
I removed the handlebar from the bike.
Oh.
That way.
And then you just sit on the bike if you get tired from standing all day.
It's basically, no, I'm switching, you know, because if you stand in one spot for a pretty long period of time, also can cause deformation. So you want to keep switching your position. Just think about the nature. You would never really be in one position for too long of a time, you know? So it's, you know, I have an alarm clock, and this is what I advise to everyone. And it's every 20 minutes it goes off, and I switch positions. So there's many different positions, you know, that I get into. I can get on the bike, I can get on a Swiss ball, I can, you know, squat down and work on the floor on the computer. So it's just many different things, you know. So as long as you keep switching your body position, your ligaments don't stretch, overstretch in a certain position. You know, you can also check that out. For example, if you lay down on the ground, you know, or you try to sit on the ground, how differently you move around than when you sit in a chair. In a chair, you can sit for hours without really making major position changes. If you sit down on the ground, you can't stay like that longer than a few minutes, and you need to switch positions. You know, because that's your body needing to switch position is your body's message to you that you're overstretching certain aspect of your switch position. That's the problem. We don't really have that when we are sitting in a chair.
That's true.
Okay.
When you say Swiss ball, like yoga ball?
Those physio ball things. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Does that make a difference from sitting on the
It does, because it's unstable, so it's gives you more awareness. Your lower back position, for example. You know, so so it does make a difference. You can't just switch from sitting in a normal chair to a Swiss ball, you know, but it's also a good tool to have to switch around. I will also talk about tools and stuff like that eventually that maybe you can bring in.
Oh, I think I'll probably, yeah, because that was pretty interesting when I
Right
saw
on,
that.
right on, man. Good to see you.
Okay,
Ciao.
take care.
Bye. Bye.
Just so you know, if you have a doctor's note,